What do we got next?
Orange.
All right, Pop, I've got the next one. This is a company called Mana and Mana Products. And so what they do is they're a development of branded and private label prestige beauty products. And I'm bringing this up. I had a thread on this earlier this week, and Colin and I have some shared background. His a little more extensive than mine inside this topic. But the idea of contract manufacturing for cosmetics and bath goods. So basically the premise is that everything that we buy outside of like the most major brands in those spaces is made by one of like a dozen wholesalers. Like if at some point you're big enough to make it yourself or whatever it is, but all of these, any brand by an influencer, a lot of the brands on inside these shelves, even things you'd see at, Sephora or wherever those kind of things are, is all, there's a ton of them that are made by any number of just white label partners. So what that kind of boils down to is if you're getting into cosmetics and bath goods, it's actually really easy. And there's a couple ways where you can just get pre-formulated materials that then they'll kind of customize for you. And the only difference between these brands is like marketing connections and niche, essentially, like maybe a little bit in product quality if you pick the best manufacturer or work through it a number of times. So this is one of like a list of like a dozen. I did a thread on this kind of earlier this week and actually called some out, but they'll also like even consult with you and like actually sit down and talk through the product. And so it's just how easy it is to get into one of these industries if you have that marketing connections or niche thing to separate you.
And capital,
I think
right?
that there's probably not many industries that are more commoditized. I'm not sure if that's the word for this one, but than skincare, cosmetics, etc. because of this. But it's interesting to me that how much success it's having with like influencers and celebrities right now. They're really some of the only people that can cut through the noise because it is so commoditized and it's been a race to the bottom. Like, I don't know if you guys have looked at like really anything in the space on Amazon lately, but it's like a 2-pack of like 2 value sizes on any lotion you want to buy, any cream you want to buy, any shampoo. It's crazy.
What's interesting is where it seems like the alpha is, and we can do the free game alert. I don't know if you hear some sounds that you can play for the free game section. Do we got can you tinkle some keys or like a little jazz? Like a horn perhaps. He's going to add it in post. But there is the free game is really in these like new hot substances. And so I think when I was initially looking at this was when charcoal started to get really, really big. And then Colin and I had looked at this together when at I think a little too late in the CBD, great, rise and fall. But really if you're ahead of like these things that are happening, collagen, there we go. Free game alert. That's free game. All right. But really, if you have collagen, charcoal, matcha, whatever those next substances are, if you're actually identifying that and putting it into a number of these products, like I think that's where the alpha is like, can you get out ahead of whatever that next trend is of like cannabinoid or of like whatever the hip new substance is, and hey, let's put that in a facial cleanser or in a scrub, and like let's get to market super fast and be ready for it is free.
So actually, it's interesting because I think sometimes we try and circle back to how we all got connected. And I think Colin, probably the first when we first started chatting was maybe CBD stuff, because I had a piece of a CBD skincare, more masstige beauty, but it was a skincare line that was part of it was contract manufactured. And really what we'd do though was it was Manuka honey and then a bunch of contract manufactured stuff. But to sort of Oren's point here, the magic was there was CBD in it. And Manuka honey. Those are the 2 extra things. Oddly enough, the expensive part was the Manuka honey. Everyone thought putting CBD into it was tough. Like we had a hemp farm and an extraction facility. It was
it's just hemp, brothers.
Yeah, it's just hemp. It goes everywhere on the planet except for Antarctica naturally on its own. But was the Manuka honey from Australia, New Zealand. That was what was difficult and expensive. But to that point, the margins became good. There's a massive margins on beauty. Because it is mostly commoditized goods, right, that are contract manufactured, and so I know that space a little bit, and I think there is a massive opportunity. Part of the other stuff people have to do is have enough money to hit MOQs, obviously, minimum order quantities to have this stuff manufactured for you, right?
So interesting.
Pieces of like every size. Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, well, interesting on that. I think there's a whole different range of what this looks like. And as Warren mentioned, like this was my family business for I think 5 or 10 years until a year or 2 ago. My dad left that, but I've been around it a bunch. And there's really the whole end of the spectrum from custom formulation. You're getting a drum at a time or a tote at a time, right? So these are like 55 gallon or what's a tote? 300-gallon quantities at a time. And then there's also like that business has ready to label is the line, right? So they have all these things where you can buy 1 or you can buy 200, and they are ready to just add brand basically. And then the kind of in between there is you can do that, but then a lot of this stuff is so kind of formulaic, right? So you can go, great, give me the base lotion, and then I want to add this essential oil blend to scent it like this, right? And even though it's pretty run of the mill, it's like there's a huge variable in terms of how much scenting. You can obviously combine scents. Essential wholesalers or essential oils are a huge world all on their own. And so there's really truly is this full spectrum of customization where it goes from anywhere from a bottle to a tote, and it can be as big or as small, as custom or not.
Yeah, and I wanted to pull up too. I got here on the video for us. So this is an example. This is a product called Embari that is a serum. And if you look at it's really nice packaging, pop it out there.
Just one of the many reasons to watch Tab Talk podcast on video.
Watch Tab Talk on video because you can't see it if not. But like, look, I've got a little applicator. We can do little pumps and stuff, et cetera. But this has shiitake mushrooms, which I think is an interesting choice. Bakuchiol and hella adaptogens plus CBD, and 12% AHA, PHA blend. But that's literally just taking one of these bases, putting it in some super nice packaging and putting some hip ingredients on there and then taking that to market, and then and if you're in like a niche market or you have dominance over LA or you own a store where you can carry these kind of products, like a lot of this is a no brainer. And I look at this too for a lot of brands that are looking for items to upsell, like in e-com. Like if you're selling women's clothes or men's clothes, or you're selling supplements, or you're selling anything related to activity, why wouldn't you be putting like a muscle rub on there, or like a shampoo or something of that nature, and just taking the time to get the good packaging? Like the margins are so high.
I was just good.
I was gonna say, you and I, the three of us had conversations about my thoughts about pharmacies in the past. There was a time in my life where I was spending a lot of time looking at buying up a bunch of pharmacies. And one thing we wanted to do was put CBD.
Classic Jameson Camp.
Yeah, just
classic. But you can buy pharmacies at like a 1x price to sales, right? So the point is, how do you then make that story? Because so much of capital raising is storytelling and narrative, right? And so there are two things we thought about. A was that we could then buy a CBD brand, because we had been looking at buying this company called Select for a while, which was like a big CBD brand that sort of went through a lot of regulatory things that they renamed their company. And then putting it on all the shelves of the pharmacies. And then we were like, why don't we just also then because you can go to contract manufacturers, you want Advil, you want acetaminophen, you want ibuprofen. That's the easiest ones there are, right? That's how every pharmacy in the world is doing themselves. So I think to Oren's point, like people should be taking opportunity to look at like what are things that could be easy upsells or cross sells. And I'll say this now that we're, probably by the time this airs, well, whatever. The hearing aid company that my partner and I were selling, we were looking at sort of on the back end having a hearing aid supplement for tinnitus as a cross sell. Not a hearing aid supplement, but a hearing supplement, right? So like, you've already bought a hearing aid. How do we sort of get you into our ecosystem into MRR? It's like sell you a tinnitus supplement that is good for hearing health and ear health. And so I think that people need to think creatively, because I think there's a ton of opportunity in that regard to do that kind of stuff.
A while ago, really a long time ago, I did a thread about just breaking down how like a barber or a hairstylist, somebody in that kind of business, can easily just add their own thing. White label.
That was sick.
I was thinking about kind of revamping that and posting again, but there's so many businesses that can just do a little line extension or a little add-on. Barbers and hairstylists are a perfect one, right? You're sitting there slanging the same stuff more or less at 50% margins. You put your label on it, you start building a brand, and you're probably closer to 80 or 90. Yeah. Well,
there's also other things to go along with that. Like if you guys know what Supplyful is, and I know just from doing a dive trying to figure out how to do this, is that they're not the problem, but the contract manufacturing, they're definitely come like serious MOQs. If you're willing to lose a little bit of margin, you can use things like Supplyful or these other sort of brands that will do, or that will full on like just made to order, like drop ship for you with your label, right? So like as the order comes in, they will print out your label and drop ship it for you. Now they're going to eat some more of your margin.
Print on demand.
Yeah.
Pharmacy.
Label on demand.
Yeah, I'll share it with you guys.
That's fire.
Right now. It's here's one of them. I'll put in the chat in Riverside.
I'm literally working on a supplements white labeling thread. So I will.
So peep it out.
I will steal this
sent it in there.
and give no credit. Oh, the credit will be to Tab Talk only. There won't be any other.
That's all that
This
matters.
is sick. This is great.
Yeah. So anyway, that's
Yeah, but again, all this is about everything. Everything is commoditized. It's about audience. You know, like 1,000%.
For sure. Like especially the beauty, like the influencer space. I went down this path like a year or two ago with like figuring out what was a brand to launch, and we ended up not doing anything, and we wanted to end up doing an eyelashes brand, and we didn't because we found Jason's dough, and we wanted to call our eyelashes brand Bambi Eyes, which literally would have been just almost the exact same thing as dough, because leaning on the exact same concept, right? Of like
kind of fire. Yeah.
Yeah, Bambi would have been a little less classy than dough, right? But like
I went through the full range of emotion, like anger, depression, and I was like,
massive margin on sort of these really commoditized goods, right? That you just find the right influencers and they push them out. But anyway, obviously, I think Oren's right there that for a lot of stuff, it's just about the audience and the reach more than anything else.
Yeah, well, I'll talk a bit about this on the second tab that we have here too, but it's also just like all these things that are commoditized. If you're buying from Herbal Essences or wherever it is, if eventually there's gonna be so many competitors chipping away at all of these major companies with X amount of distribution, and the stores pivot to what customers want, and they have kind of more options. You go, do I want to have the cheapest price person who's getting a 4% markup on that product? Do I want to do the one that's sustainable? Do I want to do the one that's supporting my local community because they have X amount of program there? If I want to do the one that is made just for me and that's a multicultural version,
or that is local,
all that
and
is
is
going to
small.
come and chip away.
Yeah. Well, to go along with all that, to tie this into like just the marketing jargon that I love to always spew about is like you want to test stuff. Like Supplefold, like for instance, to Oren's point about like having a cross sell or an upsell, and you don't want to hit MOQs, you don't want to worry about sort of custom formulations or anything. You could start with like a Supplefold that's like full on drop ship with your label. They're going to eat your margin, whatever. You just want to see people buy it. If they buy it, then go to a contract manufacturer, get it manufactured, hold inventory, ship it out yourself. Later on, you do your own custom formulations. It's not rocket science.
Don't do the work. Like that's the whole thing right now, right? It's just like, how do you do the absolute least and then make it work on the margin because there's arbitrage in using TikTok ads for your cost of customer acquisition versus any other platform. Like
everything's arbitrage. Also, to go along with this, one other note from going down this path is that sometimes what people think is that they'll save money by going directly to contract manufacturers, which is true if you can hit high enough order volume. But one thing I know is like there's a guy Ben I know who's one of the founders of this company called Medterra, big CBD company, and they do a ton of contract manufacturing.
Medterra, shout out
to Medterra. I mean, they're they're the number one CBD company in the United States. But my point is that like even they are a broker in some regards, but I know that if you're smaller, using them is better because you end up getting the broker pricing because they're ordering for they're ordering contract manufacturing supplements for 80 brands that are doing $1 million a month, right? So anyway, just as a side note as well, people go down